I'm Karina, Virtual Engagement Manager for Plant Powered Metro New York. Welcome. Plant Powered Metro is happy to bring you informative sessions with leading wellness experts. As a New York-based nonprofit, Plant Powered Metro works to empower diverse neighborhoods and communities through nutrition education, celebrating our differences as well as our commonalities. We'd like to say thank you to our partner tonight, drfuhrman.com, for helping us bring this live stream to you. So here's our plan. We'll introduce our guest. We'll have a 30-minute presentation discussion followed by a 10-minute Q&A. And so please, at any time, put your questions in the comment section, and we will get to as many of them as we can. Let's jump in. If you have ever wondered how natural substances can work to boost immunity, which foods help keep cancer cells from multiplying, what newest research reveals about alcohol and cancer, and how to maintain a positive mindset even in the face of cancer, you are truly in the right place. Tonight's speaker is Dr. Joel Fuhrman, a well-respected, board-certified family physician and nutrition researcher, and an internationally recognized expert in nutrition and natural healing. In 2003, Dr. Fuhrman coined the term nutritarian to describe an evidence-based, nutrient-dense eating style aimed at preventing cancer, slowing aging, and extending lifespan. A 7-time New York Times bestselling author, his notable works include Eat to Live, Super Immunity, and The End of Diabetes. Dr. Fuhrman's own Combat Cancer and Autoimmune Disease online masterclass is available on his website, and it's a great way to take an even deeper dive into some of the topics we'll cover tonight. And a personal note, back in 2004, Dr. Fuhrman helped my family. We went to see him here in New Jersey for several health issues and to stop what seemed like an endless cycle of sinus infections, ear and throat infections. I was so impressed. He asked to see our whole family unit together, all 5 of us from 7 to 38, I think it was, to help us create a healthier lifestyle. It was brilliant and a testament to his insights into the power of unity and how families can make sustainable change. Welcome, Dr. Fuhrman.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have so many questions for you. So let's just dive right in. We had mentioned earlier, and in some of the literature that we shared, or some of the ads that we had in social media this week, that you were seeing currently more cancer in your practice these days. Is that something you'd like to talk about?
Well, I'd say it a little more broadly. I'd say all doctors across the United States are seeing more cancer cases and more cancer cases in younger people. And we're seeing an explosion of more invasive cancers in younger people more than years ago. So the death rate, the age of lifespan, and the incidence of cancer has been increasing, not decreasing. And yes, I'm seeing them because people come to me a lot to try to come with solutions. But other people specializing in cancer and other doctors are seeing them just as well. It's not me alone. Mm-hmm. And we know that we do have this fast food revolution. I even wrote a book called Fast Food Genocide that predicted and discussed this increase in cancer and the increase in mental dysfunction, that because we get rewiring of the brain when we get exposed to fried foods and processed foods and fast foods and commercial baked goods. We're seeing that the prediction of this fast food generation and people eating more out of the home and eating more or less healthy foods than ever before is showing, and we're having more obesity, more body fat, higher body fat percentages in people. We're seeing all this damage resulting in more tragic more tragic outcomes that could have been prevented if we were better at promoting our message of nutrition and science to the general population. But too much, our message is influenced by economic power and people and the restaurant and food industry and the food, so we get too much mixed messages and people are still confused, and they also and processed foods and fast food is highly addicting and people can't stop eating it. So unfortunately it's like smoking, but now it's worse. Actually, when people started smoking less, we had a dip for about a 10-year span where cancer rates and heart attack rates started to go down. There was actually an increase in lifespan in the United States for a 10-year period between 1985 and 1995, when smoking started going less. But then the growing wastelands of Americans has overtaken that. So now we have an increased number of people getting cancer, even more than people were smoking more heavily. And now this is more food related and not smoking related.
That's really interesting. Could you tell us a little more about the nutritarian diet that you...
Well, just think about this for a minute, because we have thousands of scientific studies, and I've reviewed about 30,000 studies to cull out the maybe 1,000 or 2,000 that's most important here. But we have so many studies demonstrating that certain foods we could choose to eat have very powerful anti-cancer effects. And even so, and I break these foods down into 6 different categories of foods that have powerful anti-cancer effects. But the first one is green vegetables. And we know that we're a green vegetable dependent on, excuse me a second. Wish I had a glass of water, but I don't.
Wish I could.
I'm talking to myself. I take your glass of water out of the screen.
Why don't you we have time? Why don't you? Do you want to get up and get something?
Yeah, excuse me 1 second.
Sure, absolutely. This will give me an opportunity to thank everyone who's joining us tonight from Heart Smarts. Please feel free to put your comments in, or your questions in the comment section, and we will get to as many of them as we can. And boy, it's a terrible feeling, when you get that little tickle in your throat. And we have so many more questions for him this evening, so we want to make sure he feels top notch. How lucky we are to have Dr. Fuhrman and the Heart Smart community.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Me there. Okay.
Perfect timing.
So we were talking about the fact that we have these studies showing that we are a green vegetable dependent animal, and that the epithelial lymphocytes that line the digestive tract, the defenders at the gates of the castle, are supported, their growth and their health is supported by green vegetable intake. Green vegetables are also primary or essential for building the health of the microbiome and developing a protective biofilm that covers the villi, and particularly the green cruciferous vegetable family, which is the family of broccoli and Brussels sprouts and kale and collards and bok choy and cabbage, contains these very strongly anti-cancer nutrients called isothiocyanates. So I started with green vegetables and saying that if you don't eat green vegetables, you might as well live close to a hospital, because as a primate, they're absolutely essential to develop normal immune function, including protection against cancer, right? And then we have 5 other foods represented by the letters GBOMBS, GBOMBS, which stands for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. So we start out with a nutritarian diet, identifying the food categories that have been most linked to longer lifespan and low risk of cancer. And so we identify them with the GBOMBs. And so beans are an important source of important food for us to extend lifespan. Onions, tremendously powerful anti-cancer effects. Berries and other fruits in that category. Seeds like flax seeds, chia seeds, sesame seeds, hemp seeds, incredibly powerful, and contain omega-3s and are rich in lignans that have very powerful effects against breast and prostate cancer. And we can go into mushrooms, are a big category here. Mushrooms very powerfully lower estrogen stimulation of breast and prostate tissue, and have very powerful anti-angiogenic properties. Anti-angiogenic means they prevent the growth of fat. They prevent the growth of blood vessels growing abnormally to fuel the growth of fat. And the foods that promote angiogenesis, like higher intake of saturated fat and animal proteins, also allow tumor cells to glean a blood supply and grow. Whereas mushrooms are powerfully anti-angiogenic and say, I'm not going to let you grow fat and I'm not going to let you grow cancer. So they don't let blood cells grow to fuel cancer. And the mushrooms also are powerful aromatase inhibitors, which means aromatase is the enzyme that produces estrogen that raises risk of then breast and prostate cancer. So I'm saying body fat activates the aromatase system to produce more estrogen, and mushrooms prevent that. But in any case, I'm saying that a nutritarian diet is very prescriptive in that it recommends people eat a salad every day with cruciferous vegetables on it, that we eat about an ounce, we eat about, an ounce and a half to 3 ounces of nuts and seeds a day. We put maybe a half an ounce or an ounce of nuts with each meal, to which adding that degree and that type of fat, we can absorb about 40 times more of the phytochemicals that prevent cancer. We eat a salad or we eat broccoli and green vegetables. We eat onions every day. We eat green vegetables raw and cooked. We eat some beans every day, maybe a half a cup of beans every day. We eat some mushrooms every day, and we eat, obviously, we're talking about berries, and we've mentioned seeds already. So we're eating these foods every day. And then it's not all we're eating, but we're definitely restricting those foods like animal products, especially the foods that have the closest link to cancer. And we know that diets higher in animal protein produce more pro-inflammatory bacteria in the gut, more gram-negatives that produce more endotoxins that then cause more permeability of the digestive tract, the exposure of viruses and other toxins into the bloodstream, and of course, excitation through through TMAO, or trimethylamine oxide, from the bacteria that eating a high animal product diet promotes, and also the diets richer in animal protein produce more hormones like IGF-1 that could promote cancer. So I'm saying right now that the nutritarian diet is hormonally favorable because we're not eating high glycemic carbohydrates like sugar and white flour. Our carbohydrates are low glycemic, like beans and spaghetti squash and beets. And, so we're eating healthy carbohydrates, and we're eating a lot of beans, which are very low glycemic. And we're mixing that with other vegetables and nuts and seeds and things that keep the animal protein, that keep protein low but adequate. We get enough plant protein, but not the animal protein. And I think if somebody asked me in the chat box, or if we answered that question right off the bat, what's the most profound and interesting and important finding in the scientific literature regarding cancer of the last decade, the answer would be that more animal protein in the diet increases cancer in a dose-dependent manner, from smaller amounts to larger amounts, and shortens lifespan accordingly. And that's been documented now in more than 10 large-scale epidemiologic trials following people for 25, 30 years, looking at hard endpoints of age of death. And increasing the amount of plant protein in the diet has the opposite effect, to extend human lifespan. So we're at a point in human history where we're using scientific literature and the scientific studies to instruct people they don't have to get cancer and heart disease. We have this unprecedented opportunity to extend lifespan 20 years or more in people who have access to this information, because we can construct a diet that's rich in these anti-cancer materials and low in these factors that promote cancer. The question is, though, how does animal protein increase cancer and plant protein increases decrease cancer? That's an important point to understand, which maybe we can get into, maybe we won't. But you asked me, what is a nutritarian diet? And a nutritarian diet is essentially the healthiest way to eat. It's taking science. It's not a blue zone diet. It's not a plant-based whole foods diet necessarily, even though it is plant-based whole foods. It's a diet designed with the particular foods in mind that have the most longevity-promoting effects and cancer-protective effects, and teaching people how to utilize these foods and include them in their diet in adequate amounts to get the full protection from their anti-cancer benefits, including the knowledge of how to cook it and how to eat it to get the nutrients into the body. Let me give you just one example, about this. Because the data on the isothiocyanates, those are the ITCs in green vegetables like broccoli, green cruciferous vegetables, one of the most powerful anti-cancer substances you can consume in the body are the ITCs from green vegetables. But their anti-cancer effects correlates best with urinary ITCs, not the ITCs on your plate or in your diet. And the reason for that, this is very important now, is because the ITCs that prevent cancer are not in the food that's on your plate. They're formed in your mouth as you chew the food and break open the cells. So the amount of anti-cancer protection you get from that food is dependent on how well you chew and break open the cells while you're chewing them in your mouth. Also, the myrosinase enzyme that fabricates the ITCs while you're chewing, and you're breaking down the cell walls and releasing these packets of enzyme to form this chemical reaction in your mouth, that enzyme is heat sensitive and can be deactivated if you cook the vegetable too much. So the urinary ITCs or the blood ITCs are dependent on the amount of the vegetables eaten, whether they're eaten raw or partially cooked, or whether they're overcooked and damaged, and how well a person chews it. And because people aren't cognizant of the need to chew these vegetables really well, they're not getting the full bloodstream potential and the most protective effects out of it as possible. So us nutritarians, for example, eat a salad every day. I just had one for lunch with lettuce and arugula and some shredded kale on it. And then I had onion and scallion in there too, and tomatoes, of course. And then I had a dressing made of nuts and seeds that had sesame seeds, which are high in lignans that prevent cancer. And I had sesame seeds and cashews with a blood orange vinegar. I had some navel oranges mixed with blood orange vinegar and lemon and cashews and sesame seeds blended up as a dressing for the salad, because when you use a nut or seed-based dressing, you absorb 40 times more of those anti-cancer phytochemicals. Now the trick is I had to sit there and eat that salad with the arugula in there, with the kale in there, with the lettuce and the onion, and I had to chew it really well. I had to be mindful enough to fully liquefy it in my mouth before I allowed it to be swallowed, get the maximum benefit from the ITCs from the cruciferous vegetables and the organosulfide compounds that powerfully protect against cancer in the onion family. That when you eat raw onion or raw scallion, these are incredibly powerful anti-cancer effects. And I'm saying that the studies that I've reviewed and the studies I present in my lectures show that any one of these substances, one of these foods that you can include in your diet, like the eating of cruciferous vegetables in cancer patients reduced risk of death from breast cancer by more than 50%. The utilizing of onions in your diet regularly reduces risk of most common cancers by 50 to 88%. The risk of mushrooms regularly in the diet. We're talking about a study on lignans from flax seeds and sesame seeds showing the reducing risk of death from breast cancer over a 10-year period by more than 71%. So we're talking about each one of these food factors looked at individually has a powerful effect. But when we put together a dietary portfolio that includes all these foods in the diet in one dietary portfolio, and you're consuming all these foods every day on a daily basis, then we become essentially cancer-proof. Now, it doesn't mean every person is going to not get cancer, because obviously some people are starting it too late in life, and some people have other exposures in them. But I'm saying right now that it's wrong to think that cancer is predominantly genetics. Our genes are formed and our genes mutate and change predominantly based on what we eat. And scientists call gene silencing means when you eat enough green vegetables, onions, and mushrooms, the abnormal sections of your genes are silenced and are not expressed that would increase your cancer risk. That's why women with the GSTP1 gene or BRCA1 gene that increases risk of breast and prostate cancer, their risk of getting cancer is tremendously reduced when they eat cruciferous vegetables and onions. The WHEAL study, the Women's Healthy Eating and Living study, showed a dramatic lowering risk of cancer in all women, particularly those women who had the gene for cancer also had tremendously lower risk of cancer in proportion to they ate green vegetables and vegetables in general. And they also showed in that same study that when you ate vegetables with some fruit in the diet, you had even better effects than eating vegetables without the fruit. Showing that what we strive for as nutritarians is plant food diversity. That when we have a variety of plant foods in the diet, we increase our potential for longer lifespan. And we have this potential today to wide diversity of foods. So we're saying not even eat green vegetables, eat many different types of green vegetables, eat various varieties of mushrooms, eat various varieties of berries and fruit, and eat different varieties of seeds and nuts, and eat different varieties of so we're striving for these high amounts of these anti-cancer foods at the same time as we're increasing our nutritional diversity and our fiber diversity. Different types of fiber. You can't just take Metamucil or take psyllium husk and then think just getting high fiber is the answer. We know now from more recent research that getting a diverse amount of many different types of fiber makes for the healthiest microbiome and the most protection against cancer and heart disease for that matter. So I gave you an overview of what a nutritarian diet's like, and we can take it further. We can go into this further if you want.
What I hear you saying is that you're creating a kind of a super nutrition, a really precise, with certain patients, kind of nutrition, and then you're also adding the diversity and the impact of all of these things together, plus the benefits of all the individual substances like the mushrooms and the flaxseed, the lignans, and everything. And we all need to be aware and be mindful that we only have so much real estate, right? Our stomach, we fill it 3 times a day approximately, some snacks here and there perhaps. But if we only have that much real estate, we need to be aware and conscious of what is in our salad bowl or at the end of our fork. And some people may be more so, if they don't yet have cancer or autoimmune disease, but they want to prevent it, then perhaps they can be okay with a 95%, a 90% adherence to what you're saying, to your suggestions. But there are some people with cancer or with cancer in their family, and we do have a great question. I'll move into that. Can this diet, or what I've also heard you call nutritional excellence or precision nutrition, one step up from what we're talking about, right? Or actually, that's some of what you're talking about, the
Yes.
diversity. Can that be used to reverse cancer?
Well, that's where we're leading to next, right? The great question is that
The great question.
this is what science has demonstrated, that the same dietary portfolio that maximally prevents against cancer has been shown to extend lifespan and prevent recurrence in people that have cancer. So let me explain that a little more fully, because we can divide cancer into 3 different types. Types of cancers that are more slow growing and less aggressive, more moderately aggressive, and then the very aggressive cancers, right? Let's take the low aggressive cancers that generally do not kill people, like ductal carcinoma in situ of the breast, which doesn't cause death or metastasize, or most men with prostate cancer. These cells are with a Gleason score 6 or below. These are slow-growing cancers that don't kill people generally. They die of some other cause. But because they're slow-growing, their DNA doesn't unravel enough to be sensitive to chemotherapeutic agents well, and chemotherapy doesn't work to help a person with slow-growing cancers. So now the question is, chemotherapy doesn't work for these slow-growing cancers. Does nutritional therapy work? And what we find is that not only does it work, it can reverse them, because these are the earlier stage and the more mild the cancer, the more effective nutrition is at putting it back into remission. And there are many types of breast cancers that can become cancerous and move back in the other direction again. So many types of women who are diagnosed with breast cancer have a type of cancer, even if it's diagnosed as invasive lobular carcinoma or invasive ductal carcinoma, many of those can reverse and go back to normal again. Even when people don't change to eat such a healthy diet, some of those cancers go back in the other direction. So it's not just a train that goes in one direction and has to keep going on to kill you. It doesn't have to be that way. And nutrition can be the vehicle to increase the probability of these low aggressive cancers, these slowly growing cancers, to go back the other way. We have hundreds of men with prostate cancer who follow this program, whose PSA goes back down to normal. And now many doctors recommend they call it watchful waiting. It means doing nothing. Just follow the PSAs and see how bad they get. But in most cases, do nothing, because the treatment of prostate cancer doesn't work very effectively, and it causes a poor quality of life and does not extend the lifespan of males in general. Okay, that's one type of cancer. Then we have the type of cancers that are more aggressive, like ovarian cancers or triple negative breast cancer or premenopausal breast cancer, that certain types of cancers that are more dangerous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these cancers are multiplying aggressively and can kill people. And when they're multiplying aggressively and can kill people more rapidly, they unravel their DNA, and these are the cancers that are more sensitive to chemotherapy, where chemotherapy works. So now this person with ovarian cancer or a premenopausal breast cancer that's growing very aggressively, they need chemo but this person may still have a poor prognosis even with the chemo, because chemo doesn't kill every cell. Some cells escape chemo, and maybe 3 years later or 5 years later, that cell will start to come back, replicate, and form another cancer, a stem cell cancer that came from the original tumor. But now the chemo is not effective anymore because these were cells that were resistant to chemo. And when we give this nutritarian diet to people who require chemo with a more aggressive cancer, they have less side effects to the chemo. And then they don't get recurrence. We're seeing because the immune system, which wasn't strong enough to stop this highly aggressive cancer or to remove a tumor, it had to be surgically removed, right? But the immune system now is strengthened to the point where it could recognize the stray cells that are now scattered in the body in small numbers. And the body could seek out and destroy those cells that now could return and cause recurrence to death down the road, years down the road. So that's why I can go case after case and go through all these women, for example, who had metastatic ovarian cancer that was treated with chemo. And instead of the expectation of a 5-year survival, these women are now survived 15, 20, 25 years. One woman, for example, her name is Pam. She had ovarian cancer in 1997. She had 4 liters of ovarian fluid in her lung collapsed, had to have a chest tube put in, and she received the fluid taken out of her lung to re-expand the lung. She was given chemotherapy, but still given less than a year to live. And now she's alive 27 years later without any cancer. And this is because of the nutritarian diet, improving immunity, so to protect stray cells that could come back. Or the same thing, I have several other patients who've had even ovarian cancer that had aggressive cancers with poor prognosis that now thriving many years later. And I have people with metastatic breast cancer with aggressive types of breast cancers that did require chemo, that did not see those cancer recurred, 15, 20, 25 years. So we're talking here about, yes, it's effective for the low aggressive cancers, the slow growing cancers, the moderately growing cancers where chemo was not effective. And it's even effective in the aggressive cancers where chemotherapy is definitely indicated. You follow me?
Yes. Yes. So in all three
that's the time to do what you have to do to protect your life, right? Now it motivates people to make better choices in their life. We don't want people to have to wait till they get cancer to make better choices, but we have such these tools, including some smart supplementation that can increase the abilities of the body to reduce replication in abnormal cells without harming normal cells, reduce replication in abnormal cells. So we have
when you say supplementation, what do you mean?
I mean that in addition to the nutritarian diet, we give people extracts from certain herbs like mushroom extracts, green tea, the EGCG from green tea, extracts from turmeric and curcumin extracts. We give them maybe some other fermented extracts that they're taking now. Like we give them like 4 times a day a supplement they're taking, which has turmeric and EGCG, which prevents cells to replicate, which allows early stage cancers to recede and go back in the other direction. I'll give you an example. There was a study on the ENOX2 protein, which is a marker of an early stage cancer. So very often there's ability now in medical science to do blood markers of cancers before you have a positive mammogram, colonoscopy, or PSA rising. Before there's any signs of cancer in the body, there's some indication in the blood that cancer cells are starting to form somewhere. So we're finding that the average age of people in this study was 60 years old, and they found that about 40% of these individuals were positive for ENOX2 protein, 40%, which is about right. About 50% of people over the age of 60 have some cancer cells somewhere in the body. It may take a decade or more, 20 years to come out and find the cancer that's actually growing, but they have some cancer cells that are starting to grow. When you get a diagnosis of mass in your breast or your prostate of having cancer, there's been cancer percolating for 20 years. It's now big enough to be seen by the human eye, 10 or 20 years. In any case, in this study, it showed when people were giving these compounds, they didn't even change their diet to a nutritarian diet. They just gave them these compounds from EGCG, from green teas and curcumin, but they gave it around the clock, like every 4 or 5 hours, 7 in the morning, noon, 5 p.m., and 10 at night. And they found that a certain 9 to 12 months later, only 4% of these people were positive with the ENOX2 protein, not 40%. So most people had their cancer, their low-grade cancers, but they're not detectable yet, disappear. So keep in mind that cells are always maybe collecting defects that can lead to cancer, or they can be removing defects that lessen your risk of cancer. And you could adjust the process of that movement in either direction based on what you put in your mouth.
Amazing. Amazing. We have some very intelligent questions popping up, and I know some people are interested in juicing and how you feel about juicing as a component of the precision nutrition, specifically for cancer prevention or curing it.
Yes, I do utilize juicing, and I'll explain why. Is because if you could see the color of my hand, you could notice it has like a little orange tinge
Mhm.
because my diet is so, and my skin, you could see the color of my skin. I eat so much vegetables and so much colorful food that you can see the carotenoid coloration. And I could measure the carotenoid level in my skin on a skin carotenoid scanner called a phytocytonic scanner, which I did with your children back in 2005, right? But or around then. But anyway, the point is that your longevity and your resistance to cancer has to do with the high concentration of micronutrients and phytonutrients in your cells of your body, right? So we want to get those levels of nutrients up. When a person has cancer, they have low levels of nutrients in the tissues and high level of toxins in the tissues, chemical toxins that could be carcinogenic. So we're looking to remove toxins and increase nutrients in the tissues to make the cells, to fix the cells. We want to do that right away. Now, you can only eat so much food. You only have so much ability to eat certain calories. You mentioned earlier, you have a pie that can only fill with so much calories, and the fiber and limits and how much you can eat, especially when you have cancer, you don't even feel like eating. But by adding the juice, we can increase the exposure to phytonutrients and these protective chemicals without making the person get too full or want to push stop eating. So we make it so we can increase their exposure without upsetting or utilizing all their appetite.
Mhm.
So let's say the person can tolerate a 500 calorie meal 3 times a day, or a 400 calorie meal 3 times a day. They can tolerate 1,500 calories a day of healthy food. But now with the juices, we could add another couple of pounds of vegetables that they could have never tolerated, fit it into their stomach unless we remove the fiber, because the fiber suppresses appetite. And that's where, when we're looking to lose weight, we're eating a high fiber diet, which suppresses our appetite. But with cancer patients, we're looking to either maintain weight or sometimes get more nutrients in. So that adding the juices makes it, instead of taking 9 months to get the level of nutrients to where you are up to me, when it takes you 2 or 3 months to get your levels of nutrients high enough. So it speeds up the rate at which I can increase the phytonutrient concentration in the cells by using the juicing. So I utilize maybe a 20 ounce of juices made in the morning, and then I have 5 ounces twice a day, day one. That's 10 of the 20 ounces I use up on the first day. And the second day, I could have 5 ounces twice a day, use the second 10 ounces. And the next day after that, I can have to juice again and make a new batch. And in that juice, I usually mix 1/3 cruciferous, like mostly bok choy, because bok choy has a lot of fluid in it, and cruciferous raw has a powerful anti-cancer effect. And then 1/3 carrot and beet, and 1/3 mixture of lettuces and maybe a little celery, a cucumber, mostly a mixture of lettuces in the other third, because all these factors in the juice have a reason for utilizing them. And sometimes we put tomato in the juice too, and sometimes we can put a little onion in there too. But it's about a 1/3 cruciferous. You don't want to give too much cruciferous. That's why we're limiting it to 10 ounces a day, and that's why it's very precise in the prescription to increase the nutrients in their tissues and give them the right balance.
Great. And are you having them drink the juice on an empty stomach or in between meals or with meals?
No, with meals, with breakfast and dinner usually.
Okay. Wow. With breakfast and dinner. That's incredible. Yeah. And that, coupled with the awareness of how we're chewing, and it's not easy. I've been trying your method to chew until the food that's in your mouth is in a pulp. And I'm looking at it, kind of like a mindfulness practice, because I rush. I sometimes eat standing up, and I'll chew, several times, and then I found that I would swallow. But
Right.
you're really asking us to break the cell walls down until we, and chew many times until we have a pulp, actually, and then swallow that. And that is a practice, I just have to say.
You're right, it takes a lot of mindfulness. We're trying to liquefy it in your mouth. Even today, I'm saying, I'm sitting with people all around me eating, and and I can't talk right now. I gotta keep chewing. My mouth is full, and I gotta keep chewing, because we gotta remind each other And I'm telling them and people at my retreat, it's socially acceptable to remind each other to chew better, whereas it may not be socially acceptable in another environment, but right here, it's the socially acceptable place to remind each other to chew better and not to talk with food in your mouth, because we want to concentrate on, especially at lunch, and chewing that salad to a liquid before you allow it to be swallowed. And it takes a long time to chew such a big salad up, to eat it all
It
up.
does.
Yeah.
It does. It really does. And it takes yes, it takes devotion. So, but it's worth it, right? When you
Right.
think of what that food can do for you, it really is worth it. We have a great question. In Eat for Life, you mentioned toxic hunger versus true hunger. How do we distinguish between the two? And is toxic hunger connected to food addiction? And we'll talk about food addiction a little bit as well, and your incredible your retreat.
Yeah. I'm
Absolutely.
working on studies right now, and I'm working with, I'm actually discussing some of this work with Andrew Bremer, the president of the the nutritional science, the NIH. We're talking about, we should do studies showing the effectiveness of all these processes to protect and reverse disease. But more important than that is, how do we motivate people to make the changes necessary to eat this way? How do we educate and motivate and train? And that's what we're working on now, is these methods of motivation. We're working on that right now. But to answer your question, yes, unhealthy food is addicting. That's why people can't that's why it's so hard to make people make changes, because it's addictive for multiple reasons. One has to do with what I call the caloric rush, of how many concentrated calories into the bloodstream at one time, which then have a stimulatory effect on the the opiate centers in the brain, and make you more dopamine insensitive, which is the underlying mechanisms of food cravings, from getting habituated to this high caloric rush. And the second triad of the addictive of addictive eating and addictive causation is what the person is bringing up, is what I call toxic hunger. Because when your body has a lower level of nutrients in it and a higher level of toxins, then when you're not eating food, the liver and the kidney go into a detox mode. And the liver and the kidney are always trying to remove toxins from the body. But when you're relatively toxic, you feel ill when you're not eating, when the body starts circulating excessive amounts of toxins in the blood. And you feel wiped out, you feel fatigued, you feel headachy, you even get stomach pulsating, cramping, fluttering. People can feel agitated or angry or irritable. So I call these symptoms toxic hunger, because people they lose them. They don't have those symptoms between meals once their diet is healthy enough for enough period of time. When you eat healthfully for long enough period of time, you don't get stomach cramping, headaches, and fatigue between meals. Those go away. And now, if you don't eat calories for a long enough period of time, the body gives you a signal to eat to replenish the loss of glycogen, the lower levels of glucose in your blood, right? But, your glycogen gets utilized, so glycogen can no longer supply glucose levels in the blood. So then the body gives you a signal to eat, of which I call true hunger. And true hunger is felt here in the lower part of your neck and the upper part of your chest. And it's a pleasurable sensation. It's associated with enhanced taste sensation and sometimes with salivation. So it makes food taste good. And most times I'll even say to people, they'll say, "Hey, Joel, you want this great tasting soup I made for you?" And I'll say, "I'd love to have it, but I'd rather put it in the refrigerator now and eat it when I'm hungry. I'll enjoy it more later when I'm really hungry and feel like eating. Right now, I don't really feel like eating. I'm not hungry yet." The point I'm making is, I don't want to eat foods that I'm not hungry. It's too much more delicious and tasty to eat foods when you're really hungry. So the combination of hunger, which accelerates your taste at the same time, makes eating more enjoyable. So essentially, what we're talking about is teaching people how to get healthy enough so they get back in touch with instinctual eating, and they eat as much as they feel like eating. But what they feel like eating is the right amount of food, because the body's giving them the proper signals to eat. Because I'm saying, when you don't eat healthily, the signals are discombobulated, and you get an unrelenting drive to overconsume calories when you're not eating healthfully enough. And part of that is toxic hunger. And remember, fatigue is not a symptom of hunger. And we shouldn't be eating to give us energy, right? Look, a person's 30 pounds overweight. They could have lived for a month on those calories on the body. You don't eat to get more calories you don't need more calories to get rid of fatigue. The fatigue is not from the need for calories. The fatigue is circulating metabolic waste in your tissues, because your diet isn't healthy enough. So when people say that they're so-called hypoglycemic, they don't eat a meal, they finish digestion, their glucose curve goes to the bottom, and they feel wiped out and wasted and uncomfortable. Well, that's a sign of ill health. It's not the low blood sugar causing the problem. It's the metabolic processes that start to occur when your blood sugar is lowest, because when your liver stops taking in nutrients and storing the glucose as glycogen, right? When the liver stops putting food, taking it in and storing it, it can start breaking down toxins and deconjugating fat-soluble toxins for removal to make them water soluble, so the kidney can excrete them. The liver is an organ of detoxification, and the people are seeing these detox symptoms and feeling them and thinking that's hunger because they can stop the detox by eating again. So they can feel better by eating again, which is just really stopping the body's repair mechanisms. So we're not saying to suffer with uncomfortable symptoms. We're saying to change the diet so you don't have the uncomfortable symptoms. And this idea of feeling better with high protein intake from eating animal products, which makes you feel better, actually perpetuates the problem and keep you feeling worse when you don't eat calories, because now you have more endotoxins, metabolic waste, and of course, pro-inflammatory chemicals in your body causing more fatigue symptoms, making you feel more hypoglycemic. So it's like a person comes in with headaches and the person starts taking Tylenol and Advil, and eventually they now get headaches all the time because they suppressed that. The headache was the detox. The headache was the repair and the removal of the poisons from the meninges around the brain. And now you took in pills and chemicals that are poisonous to push the poisons back in. So now you have headaches all the time. And the more drugs you take, the more headaches you have all the time. And then you go to a doctor and he gives you Escit, Wygain, Vanquish, Excedrin, Furanol, Furosec, Midrin, drugs whose active ingredients are barbiturates, narcotics, and caffeine. And you have headaches for the rest of your life, that you always need drugs.
Oh, my goodness.
So we're saying here that this is how people, they use animal products to feel better, but now they can't tolerate not eating them all the time because they feel too sick and they try to get off them. So they become addicted to unhealthy food. Just like they're addicted to cigarettes, they're addicted to caffeine, they're addicted to medications, they're addicted to drugs, and they're addicted now to food, and they can't stop overeating.
Thank you. I mean, this is just an incredible, presentation at every level, whether people are coming in and they're new to this information, or whether they've been dabbling in plant-based eating and consider themselves more at a moderate level. And then even we have, healthcare practitioners in our audience tonight. And you're speaking right to their level as well. So I'm grateful. I know we agreed we would go a little bit over because we have such great questions. For our audience, if you have to leave us, we understand. But we can move into our formal Q&A, which will not differ very much from the way our discussion has been going so far. So is it all right if I give you a few questions from the audience, Dr. Fuhrman?
Sure, love that kind of stuff.
Okay, great. Someone said, I'm learning not to eat nuts as a standalone snack, so I don't over consume them. Do you have any snack recommendations for me?
Yes, don't snack.
Don't snack.
Yeah, here's the thing. First of all, remember, we're saying that nuts facilitate the absorption of the anti-cancer phytochemicals in the vegetables you're eating. So you want to conserve them, to utilize them at mealtime to get more nutrient absorption out of the vegetables. You don't want to waste those calories by eating them not with a meal, number one. Number two, the word snacking means recreational eating. That means eating between meals, and there's no way you could need more than 3 meals a day, because that means you're over-consuming calories, because the more calories you consume in life, the shorter your life, and you're eating unnecessary calories. If you were hungry enough to need to snack, then you're probably a world-class athlete or a physical laborer. So yeah, if you're a world-class tennis player, a professional basketball player, on the Olympic team, or working behind a 400-pound plow with an ox 8 hours a day, yeah, then you could eat more calories than 3 meals a day. But if you have a desk job and you go into the gym for 45 minutes to an hour a day, you are not requiring more than 3 meals a day. I ski, for 6 hours a day, and I don't require more than 3 meals a day. So it's really, the point is that that's called overeating, and and so you shouldn't be overeating on anything. But nuts are 175 calories per ounce, and it's your job to know your caloric window that makes the best version of yourself. And longest lifespan occurs with women with body fats below 25% and males with body fats below 15%. So we want to lose the excess fat, and we want to achieve an ideal longevity favorable weight, right? That's in the most lean, strongest version of yourself, not anorexic or too thin, but you've got to be that best judgment of your own caloric needs. So you figure out what's your most favored caloric window to be the best, healthiest version of yourself. So let's say your caloric window you figured out was 1,400 to 1,600 calories a day, let's say, right? So you've got to stay within that caloric window. It's about 500 calories per meal, right? Mm-hmm. And not add an extra couple of hundred between meals and push you up to a level that creates more body fat. So most people that snack are people that are overweight, and they're snacking because they need to quell toxic hunger. When you improve your nutrient intake, you should get back to the instinctual amount of calories you need, and you shouldn't need to be snacking for any reason. You don't need it for the energy, and you don't need it to feel better. You already feel great, and it makes you not enjoy the next meal. How are you going to be hungry for dinner if you had food between lunch and dinner? I had lunch. I want to get hungry in time for dinner. I usually have to go out and exercise to even get hungry for dinner. If I don't exercise, I don't even feel like eating it by 5 or 6 o'clock. So in other words, you got to burn off those calories you ate. So most people and keep in mind, Americans are eating over 3,000 calories a day. All primitive societies in the history of the human race ate about 1,500 calories a day. Even in rural China today, the average caloric intake is around 1,600 calories a day, not 3,200 like it is in America. I always say half of what we eat meets our needs, and the other half meets the needs of our doctors. The point is, eat the right food, eat the right amount of food, and try not to snack. Unless, you're a real professional athlete and you really need those extra calories, but that's relatively rare.
And I noticed with myself, I was very strategic last year in adding in more beans. I wasn't eating enough beans, right? So in my opinion, or any at all, actually, some days.
What's really fascinating is that the addition of the beans and the greens and the nuts and seeds in the same meal have the effect to activate the bacteria in the gut to produce more of the GPL inhibitors and the hormonal effects to suppress people's appetite and keep them satiated for many, many hours, and they don't feel like snacking. If the meal is healthy, because the nuts and seeds, don't forget, feed their calories into the bloodstream at very slow rate, at 1 or 2 calories a minute. And then you preferentially burn that for energy, and they take a long time to digest those nuts and seeds. The same thing with beans. Beans have the most slowly digestible carbohydrates and the most resistant starch and the most fiber and the most protein of all other carbohydrate-rich foods. And because of that, they feed their calories into the bloodstream little bit at a time over hours, quelling your desire to eat food, keeping your energy levels sustained through the whole afternoon, and making you satiated with fewer calories, or with the right amount of calories.
That's right.
That's the secret, to have some beans with that salad, because that's why we have the vegetable bean soup. Have some nuts and seeds with that meal, and have enough green vegetables with that meal, and you'll see how you can be comfortable eating the right amount of calories, and you won't feel like snacking till the next meal.
Yeah, and food does taste so much better when we're hungry, as you mentioned. What do you think, how long would you say it would take if someone is just starting to add foods, as you've described, into their diet? How many weeks would it take for them to begin craving those healthy foods and losing some of their cravings or taste or desire for some of the unhealthy foods?
It's a process that occurs over the first 3 months, and 6 months to get the full taste muscle back. But let's say that the first week you switch over from an unhealthy diet to a healthy diet, the first week you're feeling worse, not better. That's the heightened stage of heightened detox in the first week. And then you start to feel okay, right? And then you start to, then as a period of that first month goes by, you're starting to enjoy the flavor. Then you've gotten some taste muscle back. After all the heavily salt and heavily sugars you're eating, now you're starting to enjoy food more after the first month, and you're not feeling sick anymore, right? But you still have that emotional relationship with your addictive foods. When a person even gets off smoking, they might, after 4 to 6 weeks, they're not physically addicted, but they still have remnants of emotional addiction to those foods. And a person's in a very, very vulnerable spot right there, because they're getting signals from society and people are trying to sabotage them and looking for approval to others, and they're so you don't stop that mental craving and desire to recreate with food. That takes longer to go away. So that's why, for example, at the retreat, that's why here in California, I recommend people come in for 2 to 3 months even, so they can go home, just like coming to drug rehab. So they go home with less desire, because it's bring to drug rehab. You want to keep them long enough to not craving cocaine when they leave, right? So the same thing here with food. It takes longer to reduce those cravings. And that's why people doing this at home really has to remove the junk from their house and really can't dabble in junk food. They have to really do this 100% and remove all those, can't keep lighting the fire under their desire. Because even if the more you're cheating on weekends and going out and having bagels and pizza and all these and ice cream, and even if you're eating healthy 5 or 6 days a week, you never stop wanting that stuff if you keep dabbling in it. So that's why we found for most people, staying rid of it for a long enough period of time, they stop thinking about those things. They stop seeing them as food. They see them as what they are, self-destructive habits that destroy your brain, your function, your creativity, your mental function, your memory, and your health. These are things. Why would a person consume substances that are self-destructive just for a minute of taste sensation, pleasure, that goes away a minute later and 30 seconds later? And the reason is because they're highly addictive. And they're addictive with hormones and neurotransmitters in the brain, and that takes time to go away. So we want people to stay on track long enough so they lose those desires and cravings for those foods.
Great. Okay, we'll take one more question and then one of mine. What are your views on GLP-1 drugs and the research showing they may help reduce the risk of developing certain obesity-related cancers?
My opinion of them is that they only generally result in 10% of body fat, and the majority of people after 2 years are off the drugs because of side effects. And when you come off the drugs, you gain the weight back. So when the person isn't really learning how to get rid of their cravings and learning how to eat. So let's give an example. A person that weighs 250 pounds and they should weigh 150 pounds. I weigh 150 pounds. What if I weighed 250? I was 100 pounds overweight. So I got on the drug and I lost 25 pounds. Great. I'm still 75 pounds overweight. But now I'm on a drug. I didn't learn how to eat, so I'm not going to continue losing, number one. And number two, if I stop the drug, I'm going to gain the weight back. And number three, I've been given a permission slip to keep eating my junk food because the drug's doing it for me as opposed to me learning how to eat right. So you sabotaged a person's potential to earn great health because they didn't learn anything. Because now instead of dropping 25 pounds, I really got to drop the full 100 pounds if I learn to do this right. And I produce my own GLP-1 inhibitors by eating the right foods, and I no longer desire to eat a lot of food and to overeat anymore. And I'm building my taste muscle and my food preferences for eating a healthier diet, which takes learning, determination, persistence, and the right attitude. So now we've got to, because this just speaks to the fact that doctors are not trained in motivational techniques and they're not trained in teaching. And their whole practices don't teach people in groups to work on the social connectivity to people and teaching people how to get more pleasure out of living healthfully than they get from recreating with food. Most people are dysthymic. They're not feeling well from their bad diet, and they use food as their primary means of pleasure in life. Right. So they don't learn how to unlearn those bad habits by taking the drugs. And once they learn these techniques and unlearn the bad habits, then they don't need the drugs. And they're not even that effective.
What are your views on stress and cancer?
Well, my views in general on stress is that we do a lot of teaching, as do a lot of other people, on a new way of generating self-esteem and a new way of reducing stress in your life. And it takes a person with robust emotional health to be able to be a groundbreaking leader. In other words, to be a health nut and be seen as not getting the approval of your coworkers, even your family, and being seen as being somewhat strange you have to have a lot of emotional health just to eat differently than other people does, right?
Yeah.
So yes, stress contributes to disease, and stress also contributes to your inability to follow a healthy diet. And we're saying right now that when you're socialized in the United States and certain other countries too, we're taught to build our self-esteem by having other people approve of us and our desire to feel like and to be a big shot. We want to look better. We want to make more money. We want to be impressive. We want to impress other people. We want people to like us. We want to put, whatever the reasons are, we're trying to be a big shot and impress other people. And that's like a bottomless pit that can never be filled. And it just leads to more ill health, trying to drive this externally generated self-esteem to have other people like you, as opposed to the internally generated self-esteem that's more healthy, which has nothing to do with what people think of you. It's what you think of them. It has to do with your desire to have compassion for other people and to try to use your best intelligence to have creative goodwill for others, where every interaction you have with another human being is an opportunity to try to affect them in some positive fashion. And therefore, you become no longer vulnerable to other people judging you. It's about you feeling good about yourself. And it has to do with a lot of the teaching that goes along with a lot of different other methods of psychological wellness, even teachings from Buddha meditation, which says, get rid of the ego and get rid of the I and stop thinking about yourself and get rid of the narcissistic you that's just trying to consume, stimulate the brain or whatever, and think about now of if you have an opportunity every hour you're alive or every minute you're alive to appreciate the world around you, looking for things to be grateful for, and seeing how you can impart goodness or goodwill to the world when you have that opportunity to do so. So then people get an ability to take better care of themselves, and they can't be wounded by how others see them. And having compassion when you have a disease, when you get a disease that's serious, it can work in a way that to give you more compassion for other people that are suffering too. And to give you and connect you to other people and feel more compassionate and connected to them. And so there's never a time in life when you're still alive that you can't try to work on your emotional health. And you remove stress, because stress leaves you when you stop trying to be the center of attention and trying to have other people trying to impress them. And when you eat right, your brain can function better. And you can maintain and develop creative goodwill better. Because people say, if you're so stressed, you wouldn't be, I have so much stress in my life, I can't eat healthfully. And I'm saying to them, if you eat healthfully, you'll come up with more creative and intelligent solutions to solve the stresses in your life, right? So it all is intertwined like fibers of the cloth. And when we work with people, so they build back robust emotional health, so they can better eat healthfully, and they're less. And it becomes they handle and get rid of the food addictions better when they're not stressed out too. But that's part of the teaching, right? It's part of the program.
Yeah, that's incredible. And they can move away from alcohol and other substances that they realize are just pulling them down and
When
destroying
people come
their
off
body.
cocaine and alcohol, they just move on to donuts and sugar, and they go from they just move from one addiction to another. They don't really get rid of their addictions, right? So so when doctors say to me, because I present to medical conferences, but I speak to other researchers, and they say to me things like this. They say, and they've been saying this to me for since I went to medical school 40 years ago. It's the same. They'll say, I know you're right, but I can't get people to listen to it. Or I know you're right, but you can't get people to do it, so I'm not going to do it anyway. This is their response, right? And my response really back to them in a way that I'm going to try to be considerate of them is that, you really haven't studied or learned the motivational techniques, the educational techniques. More of you set up your medical practice in a way to educate and motivate people. You really don't have the skills necessary. So just assuming that you can't motivate or teach people to make these changes doesn't mean they can't or they won't. It just means as doctors, we failed in the ability to actively educate and motivate and induce people to make the necessary change. Don't just assume it's just because it's difficult that it can't be done.
Yeah. Dr. Fuhrman, thank you so much. This has just been incredible. I wish we had 2 hours, but I will talk about now for a little bit ways that people can get more of you. So definitely, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
To see more. Oh yeah. Well, I also want to say we all just appreciate, I see it in the comments, your steady presence in our community, your generosity with your time and your expertise in giving people the tools to live healthier lives and maintain a positive attitude. And there's no better time than this week, National Public Health Week. So from all of us, Dr. Fuhrman, thank you so much. To see more from Dr. Fuhrman, you can go to drfuhrman.com, where you'll find recipes, beginner's guides, info on specific health concerns, my very favorite vitamins that don't bother my stomach, and all kinds of other great things, like a link to Dr. Fuhrman's Combat Cancer and Autoimmune Disease Masterclass, where you can enroll online anytime to explore his evidence-based protocols for preventing and reversing cancer and autoimmune conditions. This immersive class includes 5 video modules, a workbook, transcripts so you can read along with the videos, a 20-day meal plan, and more. You'll also see details to join the Ultimate Immune Boosting Weekend that's in person in October from the 23rd to the 26th in Boone, North Carolina. And you can also see how to attend the Dr. Fuhrman Eat to Live immersion, which will specifically help you not only step away from chronic illness, but also build your immune system and step away from food addiction. So I love that. So you can find the recording for this program and many others on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notices when we go live, and remember to give us a thumbs up. Special thanks to our Plant Powered Metro core team members, Grace Simino doing our tech tonight. Thank you so much. And Jim Spellos for supporting our live stream behind the scenes. To our Plant Powered Metro Cancer Support Community Group for their input on tonight's event, and also to the Heart Smarts community and all of you who joined us this evening. To find more upcoming learning and social events, please go straight to our website, www.plantpoweredmetrony.org. We have a lot of things coming up this spring in person and more great online programs for you as well. Most importantly, please consider making a donation, even a small one, to support Plant Powered Metro's mission. Every bit helps us reach more communities with nutrition programs across the lifespan. The donation link is available in the chat, and we'll include it in our follow-up email to you tomorrow. So from all of us here in the studio, thanks for sticking with us. We hope to see you in the next program. Thank you so much, Dr. Fuhrman. We can't wait to see you live or virtual, and best wishes for good health. Good night.